Coming up on Network Africa, South Africa's ex-president Kgalema Motlanthe says it would be good for the ruling party ANC to lose the 2019 election. Togo Parliament fails to discuss reform despite protests. And the World Health Organization says over 500 people have died from cholera epidemic in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Nwaka. We take off from South Africa, where ex-president Kgalema Motlanthe says it would be good for South Africa's governing African National Congress, the ANC, to lose elections in 2019. According to him, the party has become associated with corruption and it has to lose for the penny to drop. The senior ANC member comments has shown growing disillusionment within the party. The party lost some of South Africa's main cities, including the commercial capital, Johannesburg, in local elections in 2014. Its leader, President Jacob Zuma, has survived 8 no-confidence votes in parliament. He has also been accused by the opposition and his ANC critics of being at the center of a corrupt network in government, an allegation he denies. Mr. Motlanthe has vowed to see that the electorate vote out the ANC for as long as it is associated with corruption and failure. In Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta opened Parliament today in its first sitting since the 8th of August elections. He was addressing a joint session of the country's 2 parliamentary chambers. Mr. Kenyatta said that while Kenya is waiting for a rerun of the annulled presidential election, it is vital that the supremacy of the Constitution and its institutions is upheld. While he insists he strongly disagrees with the Supreme Court's decision to annulling last month's presidential vote, though he accepted it because of his respect for the Constitution. Members of Parliament from the opposition National Super Alliance were not present, including their leader, Raila Odinga, an indication of their objection to the President's address. They were alleged to be staging a rally while Parliament was in session. Opposition lawmakers were not the only people missing from today's opening of Parliament in Kenya, as the Supreme Court judges were also not present. But Mr. Kenyatta said that until the next president is sworn in, he remains president. Constitutional reforms were off the agenda today in Togo's parliament despite last week's massive opposition protest calling for the resignation of the president who has been in power since 2005. Farouk Gnassingbe, who became president after the death of his father, indicated that proposed changes could be discussed, but the only agenda up for debate was the budget for the running of parliament. Also, there were reports that the opposition MPs had wanted the session to end. Last week, tens of thousands of people took to the streets of Lomé, demanding democratic change. It was the most unprecedented of protests in the history of Togo. There are signs of a new shortage of petrol in Burundi's capital, Bujumbura. Most service stations in the city are saying their storage tanks are empty. Queues started to form over the weekend at some places that had supply. The Energy Ministry denies that there is a shortage, saying that the petrol sellers are manipulating the market. Between April and June, Burundi has suffered petrol shortage because of lack of foreign currency to purchasing the commodity imported. Over 500 people have died so far in a cholera epidemic that has hit the Democratic Republic of Congo. The World Health Organization says outbreaks of the waterborne disease could occur regularly in the city, mainly due to poor sanitation and a lack of access to clean drinking water. But this year's epidemic, which has already hit at least 10 urban areas, including the capital Kinshasa, is particularly worrying, as about 1.4 million people have been displaced by violence in the central Kasai region. Report says at least 528 people have died, and the epidemic has now spread to 20 out of Congo's 26 provinces. So far, health officials have recorded more than 24,000 suspected cases of the disease, across the vast nation this year, averaging more than 1,500 new cases per week since the end of July. And to take a look at the cholera epidemic is Dr. Adeyeye Arigbabuwo, a healthcare practitioner, also general practitioner. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. What do you make of the widespread of the cholera outbreak in the DRC?
Yes, thank you. The disease we call cholera is a disease of huge public health concern. And usually overcrowding, poor hygiene, stagnant drainages, and exposure, especially of food and water, to a bacterium that is called Vibrio cholerae is actually responsible. And it spreads so easily and quickly amongst people who dwell together in the same environment, especially when the general rules of hygiene are not obeyed. Dirty water, contaminated food, and especially with the internally displaced people and population. You see, refugee camp is quite common, especially because running water is not a common sight in such places. There is starvation, there is stagnation, and there is poor hygiene generally. So, and it's so easy to kill within a few hours if not promptly treated because of the serious loss of water and body electrolytes, so to say, the mineral salts of the body that are vital for life.
Okay.
So, dehydration can be responsible very easily, but if properly treated, especially with oral dehydration therapy, we can record huge volume of success.
Now, the World Health Organization says that over 500 people are said to have died as a result of cholera in the DRC. This is really worrisome. In such an instance, I mean, do you see things getting worse?
Come again?
Do you see the situation getting worse in that country?
Yeah, you see, usually actions and reactions are equal and opposite. If we don't stop the prevalence or the predisposing factors, if we don't stop what are the factors likely to predispose us to cholera, the chances are that we can spread this. Don't forget, even people moving from place to place can also, carry the disease, especially when we have to share common things, we have to share food, we have to share drink, and all sort of things like that. Though there has been no ban concerning movement or trade interaction or whatever, but if you don't put measures in place, just like ALIMA, for example, this Alliance for International Medical Action, this group that, coming up from Dakar in Senegal since 2009, I think they are placed now even in northeastern Nigeria and other places like that. And they are recording success, but they are putting measures in place to stop the spread of the disease. And we as individuals also, we should bring public health and public hygiene.
We also understand that Uganda is on high alert as, the cholera, they share a border with the DRC. Coming over to Nigeria, there are also some cases of cholera outbreak in the country. What steps do you think can be taken to really stem this trend, especially in these camps across the country?
Yes, you see, the situation we are actually faced with now is a very pitiable situation because usually children are vulnerable at the camps, especially the internally displaced people. These people are now migrating, moving away from violence and, threats, insecurity and things like that. And by the time you see thousands of people camped in an area, for example, where running water is the problem, sewage disposal is the problem, and you see, the various Ministry of Health or the various states, for example, you see, have to employ and apply efforts far more than what it used to be, especially, those in the control of epidemiology or the contagiousness or whatever we call diseases that can easily be transmitted from one person to the other. it only means that the children, pregnant women, the elderly people, these are all vulnerable groups that we should concentrate on. And we should dissipate, a lot of energies, or we should apply a lot of energies trying to care for them. Yeah, if not, you see, these children are our hope for tomorrow. The elderly can't help themselves much. And pregnant people also, they could be vulnerable. These are people we should just look after mainly. Usually children under 5 years of age cannot really help themselves. So we're going to just, employ international best practices, look for ways to control our waste, and then, water, sanitation, and, make water provision, pipeline water availability. So in most places, borehole water is the rule, but then whatever way it is, once you have running water moving around us, we can reduce the contagiousness, so to say, and the epidemic can be brought to a low end. But if not, and we keep watching and we keep moving by faith, that will not really help us. Our faith must also be accompanied with work.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Adeyeye Arigbabuo, for joining us on Network Africa.